Hello, fellow truthers. I'm David Ravel, and this is ValueSign. For all of our articles and podcasts, visit valuesign.com. Today, Biden's budget. It's no friend of investors. Well, this week President Biden unveiled his budget proposal for the next fiscal year of 2022-23. Aside from the stunning size of it all, it will be by far the largest budget ever not associated with a national emergency like a war or a pandemic. The budget proposal is for an incredible $5.79 trillion in expenditures, creating a deficit of only, quote-unquote their word, $1.5 billion in deficit. I remind you, dear listener, that our first ever trillion-dollar budget was just 5 years ago. And up until 2019, we never had a $1.5 trillion budget. So obviously, we could never have had a $1.5 trillion deficit. We simply never spent that much. But there's much more to this new budget, a couple of items that every investor needs to be aware of. Let's begin with the corporate income tax rate. Currently, the United States corporate rate is at 21%, ranking the U.S. at the low end of the tax scale, and giving us a real competitive advantage over most of the advanced economies in the world. Under this new proposal, the U.S. corporate tax rate will rise to 28%. Now, aside from the fact that we will lose that competitive advantage we just spoke about, America will have a higher rate than China, France, Canada, and Russia, and 13 other countries in the G20. The U.S. will only be joining Germany and Japan in the nosebleed section of corporate taxation worldwide. But the magnitude of this move will have a devastating effect on income statements this year. This is a 1/3 jump in the tax rate, the largest such move I ever remember. My back-of-the-envelope calculation shows that assuming that Apple Computer earns this year what they did last, this will be an $8 billion hit to their bottom line. How do you think that will affect earnings? And lest you think that comment about being non-competitive is an idle one, I remind the president of the case of Accenture, the big corporate consulting and information technology company. Begun under the former Arthur Andersen, these guys are truly the best and the brightest in terms of getting the most out of any corporation. Now, back in 2009, just at the beginning of the Obama-Biden administration, Accenture decided to get out of Dodge. The company packed up, lock, stock, and barrel, and headed over to Ireland, where they are still headquartered today. And a major reason for that move was the comparative tax rates. Now, under this new Biden budget, the tax advantage for Ireland once again becomes attractive, with a 15.5% advantage to the Irish. And don't look now, but the Swiss aren't that far behind. Finally, the budget's ultimate cause for alarm for investors, the introduction for the very first time of a wealth tax. A little history might be in order here. Back in 1913, the year the Federal Reserve was finally approved, lots of interesting things happened that year, but among others, the 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified. Let me read the amendment in its entirety. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes, from whatever source derived, without any apportionment among the several states, and without any census or enumeration. Now, I'm not a lawyer, or even a legislative aide in the Biden administration, but I can't seem to get any reference to wealth in that amendment. Yet somehow Biden did. And in a provision he calls the, quote, billionaire's minimum tax, he proposes to levy a tax on everyone with a wealth of over $100 million. Now forget the 100 million bogey for a moment. What's important here is the principle, and the principle is this. The 16th Amendment provides for a federal collection of income tax, no other types of taxes. But once they establish this wealth tax, what's to prevent them from lowering that level again and again? It's a very dangerous precedent of questionable legality. And it should concern every investor who has substantial assets. So my bottom line all this, it is one more effort by this administration to push the absolute limits, going well beyond what has been up to now accepted government tax practice. And my personal view is that this could not come at a worse time, when companies are still struggling with supply chain woes and the lingering health issues of COVID among their workers. Along comes Biden to hammer them with a 33% bump in their corporate tax rate. Certainly not good timing. In late-breaking economic news, yesterday we had some dramatic yields on new issues of U.S. Treasuries, the most remarkable of which was the 2-year Treasury note, the yield of which jumped 80 basis points from 1.5% yield to a 2.3% yield. This is all reflecting the huge jump in inflation that we've experienced this year under the Biden administration. Now, if things go as planned, we should see the positive side, if there is such a thing, of inflation when we get the latest numbers on real estate later in the morning. This morning, the Federal Housing Finance Authority, the FHA, will announce their latest home prices, expected to show a gain for the year of over 17%. However, there's a warning buried in the report. If this pans out, this will be the 9th month in a row that housing prices have been roughly at this level, an indication that price increases are definitely slowing. We'll also see the latest JOLTS report on job openings, expected to once again show that there are 11 million jobs waiting for someone to fill them. In earnings today, heading the list is Micron Technology, followed by Lululemon Athletica and pet food company Chewy. All report after the markets close. And that's the value side for this Tuesday, March the 29th. For all of our podcasts and blog posts, visit valueside.com. I'm David Ravel. ValueSide is independently written and researched. The views expressed are strictly my own.